Number one is your reaction, your comments on U.S. election. The second part would be the complicated China, United States, and Taiwan relations.
So these were the best of times and the worst of times. They were the best of times in that we've had the most remarkable election since the election that we conducted in the middle of the Civil War. More Americans voted in this election than any election in our history. And they did it in the middle of a pandemic. The system worked, and it worked in the middle of a pandemic. So on the one hand, it's the best of times, but it's the worst of times in that the loser in this case, the very clear and indisputable loser, Donald J. Trump, the sitting president, refused to acknowledge the vote count. That is such a violation, not only of constitutional order, but of the norms. And that is really the big lesson of the whole Trump 4 years, Charles. Constitutions are important. What's written on paper is important, of course. But what's even more important is the norms, the attitudes, the sense of shame that surround those words on paper. And if you have someone with no shame, ready to violate every norm, it's really hard for those words on paper to protect you.
Somehow he still managed to collect 74 million votes. To me, he ought to get 20%, 30%, but no close to 45%. So how could you explain to those who love the United States?
It partly has to do with the information ecosystem we have now. They literally, they watch Fox TV, they hang around with other Trump voters, and they're really in a bubble. Now, they might say the same is true of liberals. That is just really driven, not entirely, but in large part to resist what is a huge demographic change happening in America. We are going from a white majority country to a minority majority country. So where Black, Brown, Asian, Native American people will be the majority by 2040. There's also the rising political correctness in America. And also in the last year, the left wing of the Democratic Party came up with some slogans like defund the police that were deeply unpopular with lots of Americans. Americans want better police, but they didn't want to defund the police. And so for all those reasons, he got a lot of votes. And he's, by the way, a very, very good politician.
But what worries me more than the illness of democracy is the American capitalism. In my view, the widening gap, rich and poor, is so disturbing. In your interview with Biden, he mentioned the Fortune 500. Almost 20% of the Fortune 500 companies did not pay any tax.
We have the same concerns. 60% of Americans basically haven't had a raise in real wages since 1980. The top 40%, have been doing quite well. And this is not sustainable. It's one reason Biden won. And I hope that he will begin to level off, basically restore the balance between capital and labor, because capital has had just a great 4 decades. And it's time to bring labor up again.
In your estimation, how long would it take it for the people worldwide to restore their confidence and their respect to the American system and to the presidential election?
Donald Trump was so outside the norm. We don't know. We forgot what normal really is. But I do think a year from now, I expect that you'll be seeing the U.S. government operate the way you knew it. And so Donald Trump is an extremist. He will push loyalty tests on all of these people. And he'll try to stir up the base against them if they decide to cooperate too much with Biden.
What is your expectation for the new leadership from Biden? Is he going to be a good and effective leader? People have a common thought, saying he's a good man, but not perhaps a strong leader.
They wanted somebody the far left? No, that clearly wasn't. Why did they pick up old Joe Biden? Because they intuited that he was a decent man who had the best chance of uniting the country. And what we needed most now was a reunited country. Mm-hmm. And so Biden is a man who it is impossible to hate in an age of hate. Mm-hmm. He's impossible to hate in an age of hate. And I think that will serve him very well in this job right now. He's the right man for the right time. of that, I'm sure.
The Chinese people on the mainland would often tell me, saying, Mr. Gao, when China was poor, China was backward, American people, American government were so generous and kind to us. When we are, the Chinese people, are getting a little bit stronger, a little bit richer, then the American friends turn around. They're very tough. And President Trump is the worst one.
Well, I do believe, I wrote this, that Donald Trump is not the American president Americans deserved, but he was the American president that China deserved. But he needed to come along and call the game, say, time out. We're not doing this. And Trump had the wherewithal to do that. But Trump really did something important when he kind of drew a red line with China on trade. It's very important, and it was right. And after that, Charles, he got everything else wrong. Because the way to deal with China is not bilaterally, Trump versus Xi. He made it bilateral. Well, when you do that, I don't have to tell my friends in Taiwan. What you do is you trigger all the Chinese nationalists on Xi's side. With the smart way to do this, and this is what Biden, I think, will do, is to make it the world versus China on what are the right rules, norms, and values for everybody around global commerce. When you make it the world versus China on what are the right universal principles for trade and commerce, then you trigger many Chinese reformers on our side, because there are many reformers inside China who also want to see change. Trump got the first thing right, and after that, he got everything else wrong.
Now, if we put Taiwan into the China-United States equation, then we have Taiwan has a very awkward role to play. In recent months, we spent quite a bit of money in terms of our GNP to buy arms, because the relation between Taiwan and China is getting tough, getting more dangerous.
I really have high hopes for Biden to be a president of your country, because I think he's a healer. On China, Taiwan, and the U.S., I'm more worried about this problem than I'm worried about your capitalism. Okay. Because it's all, for Taiwan especially, it's almost existential. This is why I'm happy that Biden is elected, because if Trump were to be re-elected, I was very, very worried that China would take some rash action. My hope is that the U.S. and China would resume the dialogue process.
As my friends in Taiwan know, I've written before that Taiwan is one of my favorite countries. That's developed, one of the biggest foreign reserves in the world through hard work and delayed gratification and real investments in infrastructure and education. And all the years I've been coming to Taiwan, it's changed. Taiwan has changed so much. There's only one thing that hasn't changed: your geography. Be very prudent and don't be taken in by these people in Washington who, if you pay them enough, they'll tell you anything you want to hear, that you're great and we're going to come to the rescue and we'll give you weapons. And I think I would not believe any of that. I'd be very, 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 very careful, especially now. You've built an amazing society, amazing economy. It's just, I would err on the side of caution.
Let me also ask you specifically, you know China well, and you know China leadership well. What is your assessment of Xi Jinping at the moment, what he ought to do? Because he's a very effective leader, right? He can turn things around. What would be your advice to him?
I would say to Xi the equivalent, Charles, of what I just said to and about Taiwan. Be humble. A big, confident country shouldn't worry about what someone in Australia or Houston whispers about China. Okay. A big, confident country doesn't worry about those kind of things. But be humble. Don't be telling whole countries like Australia, what to do and how to do it in the name of kind of supranationalism. But a little humility right now, I think, would serve it well, because otherwise it will produce a backlash, a global backlash against it. And that's already brewing.
Before this interview, we checked with a lot of our readers, like if we got a chance to ask Ms. Friedman some questions, what would that be? One unanimous one is here. So this is gonna be my first question. Do you still think the world is flat?
I get that question almost once a day. The answer is, not only do I think it's flat, it's flatter than ever. I'm sitting in my house in Bethesda right now. You are sitting in Taiwan. This is not quite as good as me being there with all my friends at Commonwealth. But it's about 85% as good. We're having a real conversation. We're looking each other in the eye. I can see your expressions. I'm not there, but this is phenomenal. And this is just in the beginning. Remember, when I said the world is flat, what happened is I upset, I think, of some economists. See, economists equate globalization with trade. So if trade is going down, they think globalization is going down. That's not what I wrote in The World is Flat. When I said the world is flat, what was I talking about? For me, globalization is not just trade. It's actually the ability to act globally. It's the ability to act globally, to compete, connect, and collaborate globally. That's what globalization was for me. That in the past, to act globally, you either had to be a country or a company. You couldn't be a little publishing house in Taiwan and act globally, let alone an individual. That's what's new today. We as a little group of individuals, we're acting globally for free, basically. Oh, baby, the world is flatter than ever.
What would you suggest Mr. Biden first lay his hand on among all those issues?
The most important thing is we have to reestablish trust in the country. With trust with each other, we can't do anything. We have to reestablish trust, and we have to reestablish truth. Without truth, we don't know which road to go down. And without trust, we can't go down that road together. So truth and trust are really the foundation of our democracy, and both have been really eroded in the last 4 years.
Tom, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.